This episode is brought to you by my friend Rebecca Walser, a financial expert who can help you protect your wealth. Book your free call with her team by going to friendofdinesh.com. That's friendofdinesh.com. Coming up, I'll explore how the Biden campaign coordinated a lie, a piece of disinformation perpetrated by 51 intelligence officials to conceal the evidence of the big guy's global racket. Chaya Raichik, the creator of Libs of TikTok, joins me. We're going to talk about the best and most delightful ways to trigger the left and how you can help build and support the parallel economy. Hey, if you're listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify or watching on Rumble, please hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Show.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
Slowly but surely and also belatedly, the net is starting to tighten around Joe Biden and Biden family corruption. I spoke on Friday about the senior IRS official who is applied to be a whistleblower. This is a guy who says that the Biden DOJ has been systematically thwarting criminal prosecution of Hunter Biden. And the reason they're doing it is not even because, he's the president's son. It's because Biden is involved. Not only is Biden involved, Biden is the leader of the FAMIGLIA, the La Familia that has organized this operation. And Hunter Biden is by no means the only guy that has been carrying it out. It'd be one thing if even Biden had said to Hunter, listen, you're my front man, you can use my name. No, this involves many Bidens. How many Bidens? We still don't know. I think the number is up to 11. This is a number that was revealed by Representative James Comer. Who is James Comer? He's the Republican congressman that's doing essentially Biden family oversight. And what he's been doing is contacting various banks and getting records of payments from various entities around the world, notably from China. And this is money that is flowing through many times the shell corporations and front groups, flowing to various members of the Biden family. Apparently, it's not just Hunter Biden or James Biden or Frank Biden, but the in-laws, the wives. This is basically an operation that probably rivals the Corleones and is in some ways far more dangerous. Corleones were doing bootlegging, they were doing gambling, but they weren't selling U.S. influence and U.S. access to deadly enemies of the United States. And this is really what the Bidens are enriching themselves at the expense of the ordinary American. A shocking and scandalous development, something that on itself disqualifies this man from being president. Well, the latest, this is what I want to focus on, is the new revelation that the 51 intelligence agents who affirmed that the Hunter Biden laptop was not authentic, was not Hunter Biden's laptop, but said that it was Russian disinformation, as if the Russians put it together or the Russians somehow got their contents, their propaganda, their falsehoods into Hunter Biden's laptop. 51 prominent intelligence officials said this publicly, and they said this on a single letter. And this single letter was very helpful. It came right before the final presidential debate when the scandal was heating up. The New York Post was covering the story. The story, by the way, censored on digital media. And then Joe Biden in the debate goes, look, there are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what Trump is accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the characteristics. 4 or 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. So Biden was able, obviously with the help of the media, to put this issue temporarily to rest, to remove it, so to speak, from the campaign by pointing to these 50 intelligence officials and say, even they say These guys from both parties, officials, leading officials who have access to information that you don't have. See, this is the key. This is why intelligence officials carry a certain kind of prestige and why people listen to them. It's because they are thought to have troves of knowledge that they can get behind the scenes, information that is not available to the general public. And yet we now find out that this letter was cooked up, was initiated by, you guessed it, the Biden presidential campaign. Now, amazingly, the press, which is supposed to be investigative, looking at things, either never bothered to look into this or never seems to have found out about it. It emerged only recently from Republican House questioning of a fellow Mike Morell. This is the former deputy CIA director under Obama. And in questioning, Mike Morell admitted, he goes, listen, the reason we got this letter going is I got a phone call from Anthony Blinken. Who's Anthony Blinken? You know who he is. He's the Secretary of State, but let's remember that he was also a senior advisor to the Biden campaign. So representing the Biden campaign, Blinken calls Morell and he goes, basically, we need a letter. And you need to round up a bunch of intelligence officials. Morell says he took the letter and he forwarded it to other people, including former Obama Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and others. And this is how the letter actually got started. Quite frankly, Debbie and I are getting a little weary of having to replace our trees every time we have a cold front or a freeze. We went tropical and now we sort of regret it, but we had to replace our trees, so we wanted an easy and convenient and economical way to get new trees. And then we discovered fastgrowingtrees.com. Now, fastgrowingtrees.com is the world's largest online nursery. No more waiting in line. Just go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Choose from thousands of varieties of trees, shrubs, and plants expertly curated to thrive in your area and delivered to your door. We got ours in just 2 days. Great quality trees. The magnolia tree we bought last year produced beautiful flowers this year. Join over 1.5 million happy gardeners like us at fastgrowingtrees.com. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com/Dinesh right now. You get 15% off your entire order. Don't wait. Get 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/Dinesh. I'm continuing my discussion of the 51 intelligence officials who signed a letter that we now know is itself misinformation, if not disinformation. And the term disinformation is more accurate here because it's a deliberate lie put out by the Biden campaign and then taken up by two groups of accomplices. Of course, it's the 51 intelligence officials themselves. They really knew that they were put up to it, but they agreed to be put up to it. And they agreed to testify to something that they knew was cooked up by the Biden campaign. They might have suspected that this, they might not have known much about the letter, like who wrote it. We have no idea what was on the Hunter Biden laptop, but they agreed, okay, listen, we're all signing this letter. It's going to help the Biden campaign. And this is the point. Mike Morell was asked in questioning, why did you do it? And he's very clear. He goes, quote, I'm doing it, he says, in part to help Biden to win the election. So a blatant admission that this is false information. Now, obviously, there are two purposes to this. One of them is to cover up Biden family corruption. And we're seeing that cover-up continues. Notice how little reporting there is in the media about this. Now, I was happy to see that CBS News, alone of the three networks, did cover the latest developments on the senior IRS agent who's blowing the whistle. They did a segment on this, but nothing from ABC, nothing from NBC. And this is also not just corruption, but election interference. It's election interference. Why? Because the purpose of the letter quite clearly was to mislead the American public. If the American public was getting wind, now it's hard to get wind of it because the media was suppressing it. There was digital censorship. But if you heard about the Hunter Biden laptop, you're like, oh my gosh, it has all this evidence of corruption. This might affect the way that I vote. Here were these 51 intelligence officials. We know more than you do. We really know what's going on behind the scenes. Don't worry about this. It's Russian disinformation. So you've got a corrupt intelligence establishment, and you've got a corrupt and complicit media. Now, no surprise, recently the Rasmussen survey put the question to the American people, are our recent elections, they're talking about 2020, they're talking about 2022. Are elections in America today clean, or are they affected by cheating? Turns out 60% of likely U.S. voters think it is likely that cheating affected the outcomes of at least some races in last year's midterm elections, including 37% who say it's very likely. 35% say they don't believe it's likely that the midterms were affected by cheating, and 20% say it's not likely at all. 62% say it is likely that state and federal officials are ignoring evidence of widespread election fraud, including 37% who say it is very likely. Now, I have to kind of chuckle, maybe even take a little bit of solace or satisfaction in these results, because there has been a supreme effort to convince the American people on the part of the media, on the part of Biden officials, on the part of the CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, that these elections are spotlessly clean. Any talk of systematic fraud is nonsense. There may be an isolated case here, an isolated case there. Ignore 2,000 mules. Don't worry about the Hunter Biden laptop. But you see here that the election interference and the election rigging occurs in very complex ways. Elon Musk raised the example of Mark Zuckerberg putting $500 million into the way elections are organized. Obviously, if you change a process, you're going to also affect an outcome. And Elon Musk said, wouldn't you consider that to be election interference? It's hard to think of any other way to look at it when you look more closely at what Zuckerberg did. So you got the Hunter Biden laptop, you've got Zuckerberg, you've got censorship, you've got Google manipulating its search algorithms, and then of course you've got all the evidence accumulated in 2,000 mules. So you can see why the American public, and this is interesting because if you're talking about percentages that are this high, it means that a substantial percentage of Democrats too agree, or at least suspect, that things are not on the up and up. Inflation has consequences as the Fed raises interest rates to combat out-of-control government spending. Long-term bonds have diminished in value, crippling banks. Depositors are holding their breath. Investors are bailing on bank stocks. So diversification of your portfolio has never been more important. The recent surge in gold prices shows why gold has historically been a great hedge against the stock market and against inflation. Now, the only company I trust to help you diversify into gold is Birch Gold Group. I buy my gold from Birch Gold because I want a safety net for my family. You can do the same. Text Dinesh to 989898 to get started with a free information kit on gold. Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k that's tied to a volatile and uncertain market into an IRA in physical precious metals, gold and silver. And the best part, it's tax sheltered. Text Dinesh to 989898 to claim your free information kit on gold today with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Thousands of happy customers. Birch Gold is who Debbie and I trust to protect our future and yours. Text Dinesh to 989898 today. Guys, I'd like to welcome to the podcast a new guest. Well, you've probably heard on social media of the persona Libs of TikTok. On Twitter, it's @Libs of TikTok. And we have the creator of Libs of TikTok. It's Kaya Reichik. She's also the author of a children's book that we're going to talk about called No More Secrets, The Candy Cavern. But Kaya, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you. And, you've created a real sensation with this persona, Libs of TikTok. Let's start by me just asking you to tell a little bit about yourself and how you got the idea of doing what Libs of TikTok does, which is expose people by doing nothing more than presenting them in their own persona and in their own words.
Yeah, well, first of all, Dinesh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Libs of TikTok started during COVID. because just like most other people probably listening to this, my office was shut down. The world was turned upside down. A lot of people couldn't work. So I was at home, kind of bored, looking for something new to keep me entertained. And that's when I stumbled across TikTok. And TikTok, at the time when I first started, my account was mainly just focusing on COVID. So I posted a lot of videos about people, thinking about getting vaccinated, and the whole vaccine cult and the fear mongering, and people being obsessed with Fauci. So just really funny and entertaining. And I started sharing all that. And then I stumbled across the other side of TikTok, where I saw these activists and groomers and predators, and these people are in all the industries. So teachers and doctors and counselors and just activists in general. And these people, I realized, were targeting kids on TikTok, and they were trying to push the agenda to basically sexualize kids. And I was like, this is like so crazy, and nobody was like talking about it. And I just knew that I had to expose this. And that's when Let's TikTok became a mission to protect children and to protect childhood innocence.
Now, did you find on TikTok, and do you find more generally as you look around the culture today, that this is the kind of the real thrust of so-called trans ideology? Because it's conceivable that you could have a whole predator operation, let's say on TikTok or anywhere else, and it has nothing to do with the trans. You've just got these pedophiles who are interested in children, but it looks like there's been a sort of a weird merger between this the corrupting of children on the one hand, and this sort of drag queen story hour, and the idea that, so that is it, am I right that the trans ideology is the vehicle through which this is done, or are there many other vehicles also?
Yes, I think you're right. And I think it really thrives a lot on TikTok specifically, because I believe that TikTok is a weapon for China to destroy us from within, to target children, so that we have a confused and chaotic and destructive society. So that's what I believe. But so we're seeing specifically on TikTok all of these activists who are pushing the trans agenda, who are pushing gender ideology, and I think that it does exist on other platforms as well. But the way that TikTok is designed is that they feed, with the algorithm, they feed kids this type of content. So I believe that it's being pushed onto kids specifically. And TikTok is also a platform, I believe, for narcissists, because they just video themselves, they put it out there, they just want views, they want to just talk about themselves. So that's why it really became a center for people who are activists, who want to push it, they want to talk about their pronouns and about their gender. So they do that, and then the algorithm feeds it to kids, and then we're left with just tons of confused children, and that's exactly what I think China wants.
I mean, the technique that you came up with, which is so simple, is essentially to just cut clips of people speaking in their own words. And I think it's quite amusing how people began to scream and accuse you of being hateful. And you were being hateful for doing nothing more than showing people, in a sense, their own designed self-presentation. Did you suffer censorship either at Twitter or YouTube or Facebook? Talk a little bit about what the left has done to try to go after you.
Yeah, so I think that with a lot of these activists and the far left in general, they want to exist in their own little bubble where everybody agrees with them. So I was taking their own content, sharing it with zero editorial, barely adding commentary, and they couldn't stand to see it because it's being shown to people who might not agree with them. So for my efforts of simply sharing their own videos, I was banned 7 or 8 times from Twitter, temporarily banned. My Instagram and Facebook were both suspended. Those were both reversed, actually. I was banned from Linktree. I was banned from a few other software companies, at least. But the censorship it got totally out of control. And for simply just sharing their own videos in their own words, because it was a threat to their agenda, because other people were finally seeing what they themselves were putting out there, what they themselves believe in, and their own opinions.
Let's take a pause, Kaya. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about censorship, and then I want to also talk about your children's book. It's called No More Secrets, The Candy Cavern. We'll be right back. Mike Lindell and MyPillow have launched My Mattress Topper 2.0, and this is a mattress topper you simply must get. The new 3-inch MyPillow mattress topper is made up of 3 unique layers. Layer 1, MyPillow patented foam, which provides superior support and durability. Layer 2, transitional foam, which provides optimal comfort, evenly distributes body weight, and helps relieve pressure points. And Layer 3, the cover, made from a special material to keep your body temperature regulated through the night. This MyPillow mattress topper is washable and dryable. It's made in the USA, comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. The incredible 3-inch mattress topper is as low as $219.59 with promo code Dinesh. So go ahead and call 800-876-0227. Again, the number 800-876-0227, or just go to mypillow.com, but make sure to use the promo code DINESH, Dinesh. I'm back with Kaya Reitchik, the creator of Libs of TikTok. We're talking about censorship. I mean, Kaya, what's so strange about all this is that the left keeps saying we need censorship to prevent misinformation and disinformation. How could you possibly be accused of doing either when you are merely quoting people or cutting clips of their own videos? I mean, isn't there something kind of nuts about that?
Yeah, and I think it just comes back to the fact that they know that they can justify their opinions. So, that's why I think that my method of just showing them in their own words is super effective, because they can't deny it. They can't deny that they're saying these things and that this is happening. And they also can't justify it because their views don't hold up to scrutiny. So that's why they just want to silence me or silence people who disagree with them, because it's just a threat. It's a threat to their agenda. And as far as Twitter, I was suspended so many times while being so careful not to violate the rules. And then after Elon bought Twitter, in the Twitter files, there was a memo from them, Twitter employees, saying how I never violated the rules, but they just wanted to suspend me. So it just shows that the censorship, it was coming from all sides, but I'm actually pretty hopeful. I think that with Elon owning Twitter, the censorship it's going to go way down. I don't think I'm going to be censored on Twitter anymore, other platforms as well. I think that their whole narrative is crumbling and they know it. All the legislation that's being passed to protect children. So I'm just really grateful that I got to have a part in that.
I mean, it is encouraging because it seems like for censorship to work, you would need the collusion of all the main platforms. So just with Twitter alone having broken out of that, it now puts pressure on YouTube and Facebook. At least this is my hope also, that we'll be able to break the censorship logarithms and algorithms in those places as well. Let's pivot slightly to the issue of a children's book. You've joined, Debbie and I actually did a book on socialism for Brave Books, and a number of other people that we probably both know are also doing the same. Talk for a moment about why you decided to embark upon a children's book, and then tell us specifically a little bit more about this one.
So I spent 2 years basically exposing the far left for their agenda to sexualizing our kids. And I decided that, it's not just enough to expose them and to raise awareness about it, but I wanted to actually give parents a tool that they can use to combat it. So my book basically just encourages families to strengthen the family unit to create that trust between parents and children. And it teaches kids a lesson and parents can use my book to have a conversation with their kids about trusted adults who may potentially be predators or groomers. So it opens up that conversation. And I think that my book could actually help save a lot of children.
I mean, it's kind of funny, Kai, over the weekend I was with we had a little bit of a family reunion, and I was reminiscing that when I was 7 years old, we had a guy who rented a room in the back of our house. He was a pilot. And one day he said to me, "Hey, Dinesh, come to my room. I'm going to teach you the game of chess." And so I would regularly follow him to his room over a period of several years where I basically learned chess. And one day I was able to play my dad and beat him. My dad's like, "Where do you learn chess?" I'm like, "Well, it's from from Mr. Kaushal downstairs. And it just occurred to me as I was describing this innocent anecdote that this is not something I probably would want to do today. This is something that parents would probably warn you against. And it's a little sad, isn't it, that our culture has become so twisted that these kinds of once normal human interactions have now been put into the forbidden category.
Yeah, so parents, in today's day and age, parents have to be extra vigilant because I think that this agenda is coming from all sides. It's coming from everywhere. It's in your kid's school. It's in their hospital. There's mental health counselors. It could be even a relative, like a trusted, like an aunt or a cousin, an older relative. So it just feels like they're attacking children from every single angle. So I think parents have to really be extra vigilant, be very aware of what's going on with their kids. And that's what my book actually talks about, because the first step of a predator is to cut out the parent and isolate the child so that they could prey on the child. So my book basically teaches kids, like, if there's a trusted adult who said, oh, don't tell your parents this, it will just be between us, it will just be a secret, the kid should know that that's a massive red flag and that person might be a predator, and they should have the confidence to go to their parents right away and hopefully not fall into that trap. So it is really scary that we even need such a book right now. It feels like it's a relatively new issue. Over the last few years, it's become really intense. But I'm hopeful that I can actually help a lot of families, and I think I will.
Wow, the book is called No More Secrets, The Candy Cavern. The author is Kaya Raichik. You can follow her on Twitter @Libs of TikTok. Kaya, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Debbie and I started eating better this year. We're on the road to losing some weight, but one of the foods we can't seem to eat enough of, and it's a requirement, are veggies and fiber. Now, what better way to get all your fruits and veggies plus fiber than with Balance of Nature? Balance of Nature Fiber and Spice is a proprietary blend of 12 spices for digestive health. The intense flavors and deep colors of the spices are the most condensed whole food source of phytonutrition available. It's recommended to be paired with their star product, fruits and veggies in a capsule. So easy. Select the whole health system for the best price. Now, start your journey to better health right now. Take advantage of Balance of Nature's great offer. Get $25 off plus free fiber and spice with your first preferred order of fruits and veggies when you use discount code AMERICA. The offer can end at any time, so act now. Call 800-246-8751. That's 800-246-8751, or go to balanceofnature.com to get the discount. You need to use discount code AMERICA. I'm not sure who the most prominent trans personality is in the United States. I suppose it would be this character, Dylan Mulvaney, who keeps showing up in ads and commercials for all kinds of causes. It seems like this guy almost single-handedly sunk Bud Light. Bud Light is trying to do all kinds of repentance now. They fired not only the VP of marketing, but her boss. Both of them have been placed on, I don't know if it's temporary or permanent leave. They're reevaluating their brand strategy. They've issued a kind of more conservative ad with Clydesdale horses. Whether this will save Bud Light, I don't know, or whether it's a little too late. But again, I look at social media today and I see there's Dylan Mulvaney putting on makeup all over his face, and he's the Maybelline girl. What? So he's become the poster woman, so to speak, for makeup. And I'm thinking to myself, is it really all that easy to become a woman? My mind flashed back to a very interesting book that was published now a couple of decades ago. It was written by a woman who's still teaching at Georgetown. She's a prominent cognitive psychologist and linguist. Her name is Deborah Tannen, and her book written years ago was called You Just Don't Understand: Men and Women in Conversation. Now, Deborah Tannen goes on to argue that there is a kind of different psychology between men and women. By the way, there was a later book along the same lines, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. The idea being not that men and women live on different planets, but they have a different inner wiring. And Deborah Tannen went on to use conversation as a kind of demonstration or exhibition of how differently men and women think. Her point was that when men and women have arguments, and this is, by the way, kind of useful knowledge for spouses or boyfriends and girlfriends, she goes, men very often say, "You just don't understand." Whereas women say something a little different, "You just don't care." And in the difference between "you just don't understand," "you just don't care," says Deborah Tannen, there is a whole world of difference. For men, when there's, your wife comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm having difficulties, I've had a bad day," the man goes, "What's the problem? Tell me about it. I've got a solution." In other words, the man tries to solve the problem as an intellectual problem. He views conversation as a form of getting information or reporting. Report to me what the problem is. Let me see if I can tackle it or if I can help to solve it. But the woman, says Deborah Tannen, is often not looking for a, quote, solution. She's had a bad day. She's looking for concern, and she's looking for sympathy. She's looking for understanding. Tell me about it. So for a woman, says Deborah Tannen, conversation is relational. It's aimed at building understanding. It's aimed at building community. It's building networks, not just with spouses, but also with friends. That's the point of having a conversation. Whereas for men, conversation is informational. It is aimed at addressing problems in the world. It's like, I need conversation so you can tell me what's wrong so I can try to figure out how to fix it. And this is really why Deborah Tannen says men and women are sometimes in their arguments, and she attributes a good deal, one factor leading to breakdowns of communication, even divorce, is due to the fact that men don't know that they live on Mars, and they don't know that women live on Venus. In other words, that they don't engage the other person's way of engaging in conversation. So, now, the question is whether these differences between men and women are sort of hardwired, whether they are genetic, whether they are biological, or whether they are cultural. But Deborah Tannen basically makes the point, I think a very sophisticated point, that those two cannot be separated. It's not as if something is one or the other. Very often culture or socialization follows biology. My daughter is very young. I haven't told her anything about music. She's walking in an auditorium. She hears the violin. She goes, "Oh, what's that?" She's interested. She wants to stay and listen. I realize that she has a natural affinity for music. I then give her music lessons so her musical talent improves. So is her musical ability natural or biological? Is it cultural? Well, it's both, and culture here is taking its cues or following the lead provided by nature. So Deborah Tannen goes, whether it's cultural, whether it's biological, it's obviously some combination of the two. Men and women are different. And so I was thinking about that and thinking to myself, all right, if men and women are different in that way, not different species, of course, but at least different types of human being, then what sense does it make to say, all right, now, Dinesh, I'm going to trim my eyebrows. I'm going to grow my hair out. I'm going to put on some makeup. I'm going to put on a dress. I'm going to jump around, or do some dance steps and declare that I'm a woman. My point is, it's not so easy. And I think Deborah Tannen knows it's not so easy. And so I end on a little bit of what I think is an unfortunate footnote. I haven't heard a word from Deborah Tannen recently about this subject. This is an example, it seems to me quite clear, where she's decided, listen, although I know better, I'm not going to say anything about this. I've got a very prosperous career at Georgetown. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to speak out. So it's very unfortunate because you've got powerful ideas developed by sophisticated scholars that would help advance this debate. And yet the scholars, I think largely out of caution and out of fear, say not a word about their subject. If you got aches and pains that are bothering you and affect your day, listen up. Debbie and I started taking Relief Factor a couple of years ago. The difference we've seen in our joints, nothing short of amazing. Aches and pains are gone thanks to this 100% drug-free solution called Relief Factor. Now, how does it work? Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation. That's the source of aches and pains. The vast majority of people who try Relief Factor love it. They become regular customers for the simple reason it works for them. Debbie's a true believer believer. She can now do the exercises that for a long time she wasn't able to do. So Relief Factor has been a real game changer for her, her aunt, other members of our family, Mike here in the studio, and for many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of just $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF to find out more about this offer. The number again, 800-4RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. Feel the difference. Guys, I'm really happy to welcome to the podcast Lee Wambsgans. She's the Chief Communications Officer of Patriot Mobile and also the Executive Director of Patriot Mobile Action. She co-created and still manages the South Lake Families PAC, which has been involved in CRT and also mobilized a bunch of school board victories for conservatives in Texas school districts. Lee, I wanted to have you on the podcast to talk about a concept I've alluded to but not really developed. And it's this concept of developing for conservatives and Republicans a parallel economy in which we subsidize products and buy things that are produced kind of on our side of the aisle, and we don't pump money into bankrolling the other side. Now, this is not something we've thought about in previous decades. My question is, why is this concept relevant now?
Well, I will tell you, Dinesh, and it's such an honor to be here with you. I'm such a fan. We haven't thought about it on the right side, but I will tell you the left has thought about it, and they've been doing this for a very long time. And they've been using proceeds from leftist organizations to fund the left machine, and we're just now catching up. You know, my company, Patriot Mobile, was originally created as a response to a leftist mobile phone company taking over a bunch of Tea Party races and winning them back in 2012.
Let's talk about this. Well, let's start by talking about people's psychology, because we're so used to people go to Disney, they shop at Target, they buy things here, they buy things there. In fact, they often save money for much of their lifetime to send their kids to expensive elite private schools. And then they realize to their dismay that those schools are inculcating values that subvert what they've been trying to inculcate in their children. So there's a kind of people say to themselves, well, how do I kind of disengage? Do I have to sort of follow things? And in other words, talk a little bit about how someone can go about the business of participating in this parallel economy.
Well, first of all, you have to know who you are and what you believe in, and you have to state those boldly. You know, we put Christian conservative company right there on the front on our website. We have developed 4 pillars that we support: the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, and we support our military and first responders. And how we go about that is we're upfront about that, and we tell people, you know, the leftist down on Main Street is not going to want to use Patriot Mobile. But the conservative Christian people who don't want to be giving their money away to organizations that are literally fighting against everything that they stand for. I mean, you and I know volunteers give hundreds of hours every campaign cycle. You and I know, even without the campaigns, volunteers support our pro-life organizations. They serve in the crisis pregnancy centers. They serve in the churches. Churches are taking in unwed mothers who are in crisis pregnancies, giving them a home, giving them medical care. So why would you, when you're doing so much for the things you believe in, give money to the organizations that want to fight you on every corner? And we're starting to wake up, and conservatives are starting to move over and realize that every little thing in their life, they need to be considering where that money is going. You know, probably one of the things almost all Americans have is a cell phone. And I talk a lot about the Second Amendment, but I talk to people about another weapon that you have in fighting for your freedom, and that is your cell phone dollars. Almost everyone in America has a cell phone bill. And so where do you want those dollars to go? And same thing, you know, John Rich is developing a conservative bank. You know, we're coming on the heels of the Hobby Lobbies of the world. And it's time, It is time. The left has gotten so far extreme. If the right doesn't stand up in our economy and create every service that you could possibly imagine. There are conservative banks. They're usually the smaller neighborhood banks. We need to really be thoughtful and intentional about where we spend our money. I always tell people, I'm not here to sell you cell phone service. What I'm here to tell you is the cell phone service you have, you can choose what it funds. And if you want to fund your enemies that want to take away your freedoms, your right to protect yourself, that wants to give millions of dollars to the Black Lives Matter movement, then stay with Big Mobile. But if you want your cell phone bill to actually have a portion go to those things you believe in, you need to move over to us. And you need to think about that in every portion of your life. Even the grocery store, there are farmers that will sell you cuts of meat. There are markets where you can get your vegetables. Every facet of life, we need to start thinking about that.
I mean, one thing I like about this company, about Patriot Mobile, by the way, the website's just patriotmobile.com/Dinesh to get the promo code and the discount. But one thing I like about the company is you're not giving anything up. I mean, if you tell someone don't go to Disney, they're like, well, I don't have another Disney, but with Patriot Mobile, what you're saying is you can use the services and the networks of the big three. You're giving up nothing, but you're gaining the fact that your dollars are helping to support what you believe in. Isn't that true?
That's true. And in the mobile service provider world, we have these things called aggregates, and it's basically a middleman. So we basically buy, for lack of a better word, wholesale and resell the product, which is cellular phone service. We're on all the same towers nationwide. It's the exact same coverage. The difference is that profit margin that's used to give to the woke companies. Our profit margin is used for conservative causes. And I'll give you a few examples. We just finished the NRA convention. We give to Susan B. Anthony Project. We also they've changed their name now to Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life. Embrace Grace. We go and build boxes for new mothers, and we give to them regularly. We give to organizations that fight for our constitutional rights. First Liberty is an amazing organization that has done tremendous things in our country to preserve our God-given rights and freedoms. And we need to, on both the political level as well as a nonprofit level, be supporting organizations and companies that support the good things that made America the foundational Christian conservative values of our country.
I couldn't agree more. And Lee Wamsgans, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Dinesh. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
I'm continuing my discussion of Christian apologetics. We're in chapter 18 of What's So Great About Christianity. This chapter is subtitled The Exaggerated Crimes of Religion. And what I'm investigating is it not a fact? I'll argue that it is a fact that the crimes of atheism far exceed by many, many orders of magnitude the so-called crimes of religion, which do exist but are minuscule by comparison. Now, the way to see this is to focus in on some of these alleged crimes and look to see really how bad they are. And I'm going to begin with the Crusades, which, you might expect the Crusades to be denounced in Islamic propaganda, but the Crusades are most vehemently denounced today in the West from the political left and from the secular left. Here's James Carroll. He talks about the Crusades as, quote, a set of world historical crimes whose, quote, trail of violence scars the earth and human memory even to this day. And so for many people, when you say the horrors of religion, the first thing that jumps to mind, the Crusades. Now, the Crusades, of course, were fought between the Christians and the Muslims, and yet, interestingly enough, we don't hear a lot about the horrors perpetrated on the Muslim side, but we hear about the Christian evils in the Crusades. And let's think about how these evils came about. Before the rise of Islam, virtually all of what we call the Middle East. I'm thinking here about places like, of course, Israel, but also Jordan and Syria, all Egypt, Iraq. All of these places were Christian. They were predominantly Christian. The sacred places of Christianity where Christ was born and lived and died are in that region. But inspired by the sort of Mohammedan or Islamic call to jihad, Muhammad's armies conquer Jerusalem. They conquer the entire Middle East. They push south into Africa. They push east into Asia. They push north into Europe. They conquer parts of Italy, virtually all of Spain. They overran the Balkans. And they're preparing for a kind of final incursion that would bring all of Europe, then known as Christendom, into Islamic subjugation. And so serious was this threat that Edward Gibbon, the historian, said that if the West had not fought back, and the way of fighting back, as we'll see, is called the Crusades, he says, quote, "Perhaps the Quran would now be taught in the schools of Oxford, and her pulpits might demonstrate to the circumcised people the sanctity and truth of the revelation of Muhammad." In other words, a full Islamic takeover of the West. But more than 200 years after the Islamic armies conquered the Middle East and forced their way into Europe, finally, you can almost say belatedly, the Christians begin to fight back. The First Crusade was summoned by the Pope, I believe, in 1099, right around that time. And so Christian knights in places like France begin to then mobilize to retake the Holy Land, retake particularly Jerusalem. And this is what we call the Crusades. Now, there was a First Crusade, a Second Crusade, a Third Crusade, some say even a Fourth Crusade. So there were a sequence of crusades. And the term crusade, by the way, and the Crusaders is not a contemporary term. In other words, the Crusaders didn't call themselves Crusaders. It's a later term that historians have coined, and it's superimposed, kind of like the Middle Ages. People who lived in the Middle Ages didn't know they lived in the Middle Ages. It's only later that the term was projected back onto the period between about 500 and 1500 AD. The Crusaders were by and large they were an idealistic bunch. They weren't provided with any kind of munitions or support. Most of these Christian knights used their own pack animals. They used their own employees. In fact, their own employees became part of their army, their mini army. And some 40,000 Christian knights set out from Europe to recapture the Holy Land, and they did. Now, they weren't able to hold it. Jerusalem fell to the Crusaders in 1099, and eventually Saladin, Salahuddin, I guess the Muslim name, reconquers Jerusalem almost 100 years later in 1187. The Crusades were kind of a mixed success. They had some benefits. In fact, recently when Debbie and I were in Israel, you can still see Crusader castles, the walls and embankments and forts that were built and left behind by the Crusades. Ultimately, the Crusades was a war. It was a battle. It produced casualties on both sides. By and large, the fighting was not with civilians. It was armies against armies. So it was nothing more than one chapter in the long history of warfare. I wouldn't say a particularly glamorous one, but not a particularly evil one either. It wasn't a world historical crime of any sort. James Carroll, to the contrary. The Christians fought to defend themselves and their civilization from foreign conquest, and the Muslims fought to continue conquering Muslim lands. When we convene again tomorrow, I'll pick up with the next historical or alleged historical crime, the Inquisition. But I think we can begin by agreeing that the Crusades was, from the point of view of world historical horrors, not really one of them at all.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.